So I've probably mentioned this in a few other videos. It's been a tradition for a very long time for my father's side of the family to go camping over the 4th of July weekend. And well, it was something I was very much looking forward to doing again this year. I even invited an old friend of mine that I would go up with all the time in years past. I was very much looking forward to it. However, Mother Nature had other plans. The Canadian wildfires are still roaring, and it was just smoke as far as the eye could see. You just go outside, you can smell it. You could even taste it at a few points. It wasn't as bad as it was the beginning of the last month, but it was still enough to definitely irritate me in a few ways. And on top of that, it's not like I had a place I could go to if I was up camping. I mean, I would just be inundated with the stuff. And so regretfully, I had to cancel the trip. However, I still had that one friend with me, so we decided to take advantage of it. The first big thing is that we went out to dinner, even inviting another friend that we've known since junior high school along. And I could tell it was definitely getting bad because before we started to say our goodbyes at the restaurant, we looked outside and the sun showed the color of blood as it was setting. That's not something I'm used to seeing, and I wasn't the only one rather shocked by it. There were a lot of other people standing around just going, look at that, that is crazy. So the next day is when I sent the word that I was going to be canceling. This was something I found rather weird, is because my mother kept convincing me that the idea that this was bothering my breathing was something that was just only in my head. But when I told her I didn't really feel comfortable going up because I didn't have any means of getting an air purifier up there, she was just kind of like, okay. It's always very confusing when that happens. The idea she's very dedicated, ooh, it's all in your head, you're mental, you just need to get it fixed. And then I call her out and she's like, yeah, whatever. So the main things we took care of that day, in the morning both of us had to take care of a few minor chores. I had to go to the bank, he had to get measured for a suit, and so after the morning is when we started to do a few other things. The first is we went to this art exhibition. There is a art museum not too far away from where I am, and during the summertime, they always have a specific exhibit of many different things. Some that I can remember was the influence of Egyptian art in the early 1920s in America, the art of the kimono, a Norman Rockwell exhibit. I was a really big fan of that one. And this one, this one I'm still pretty amazed that my friend wanted to go to. It was all about women's fashion in sports. This was something I was very much interested in. Try to maybe get a few inspirations for things that I would like to wear. I am very much an old soul, and I wanted to see what somebody that would have been a young soul at the time would have been wearing. But we both were able to have a pretty good time with it. And it was just so interesting seeing that no matter what sport they were in, it was the Victorian era, so the idea of showing off your ankles was very much frowned upon, so it was just crazy to see women rock climbing in what looked like modified dresses. There were even some that I guess went safari hunting, which that one really threw me through a loop. But then again, I feel like it was the friend that put it into perspective for me. This is kind of showing the elite of society, the ones that had a lot of money to burn, or a husband with a lot of influence. Because, come on, it was the Victorian era. So we were able to finish up the exhibit all right. And that's when we started to try to figure out what we wanted to do for lunch. This was something we had to do rather quickly because we had plans to see the latest Indiana Jones movie. So obviously needed a meal in a hurry. Went to Jimmy John's. Freaky fresh, freaky fast. Now as for the movie itself, well, both him and I really enjoyed it. I'm not sure if anybody wanted a review of it, but I'll give you a pretty quick one. Is it as good as the original trilogy? No. Is it worse than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? No. In all honesty, I was expecting a fun action movie, and that's exactly what I got. And the biggest thing that I liked about the movie as well is it felt like a very good conclusive note. A lot of people would love to point at The Last Crusade for being the best ending. For me, that wasn't an ending I really liked because it very much felt like, yes, that was the very last adventure. Indiana Jones went home and just enjoyed the rest of his life in teaching, then had a pension, and then recounted all his great adventures. But these later movies, it kind of shows that he still had the adventuring spirit in him, and that he was still very much up for the hunt. And that's what I like about the ending of this movie, is it gives the idea that there are further adventures to come, but we actually don't need to see them. So probably one of the more interesting things to note about this month is we had some very, very hot spells, like open the door and all of a sudden you can just feel these sweat beads dripping down your forehead. Well, with the idea of having to mow around both the rain as well as the intense smoke, I had to mow the lawn in a really intense heat like that. And as of now, I've been having a lot of problems with my riding mower. It's a long story and it's kind of painful to get into. So, I had to push mow it. And I knew I was going to get hot and sweaty doing it. And at that point, I was just kind of like, screw it. Why am I even going to wear a shirt? So, yeah, I must gave my neighbors quite a show. I mowed my lawn while wearing nothing but an athletic bra and very skimpy shorts. It was actually pretty nice because I didn't have a shirt on. There was a lot more of a breeze to be able to help cool off the sweat a little bit. And on top of that, it really helped out in terms of confidence with my body. It helped that I felt pretty confident before that, but even while I was doing it, I'm just kind of like, you know what? I look pretty nice. I hope I'm not making my neighbors' wives jealous or something like that. But also on that same note, it's very interesting. I have a lot of fluctuating days. There are some days where I feel like very, very confident in who I am, and so I'll be wearing like very feminine clothes. And then there are some days where I don't really feel all that confident, and that is when I like to wear more androgynous looking clothes, or, well, even boy clothes. And like I mentioned in other videos, even when I do have the body confidence, I will still very much wear men's shorts. Why? Pockets. If somebody could figure out how to invent cargo shorts for women, you could make a ton of money. The other reason I like to bring this up as well is, I'm trying to think if I might have mentioned this in one of my past videos or not, but when I was really, really young, like maybe around like the age of 8 through maybe the age of 11 or so, I was a rather round child. And this was something that very much disturbed me. I wouldn't say I like starved myself or anything, but I made sure not to eat a whole lot during that time because I very much felt fat and repulsive. Mostly because it felt like I had a gut. And it's a little annoying as that same mentality rears its ugly head every so often. But then again, I find that women are held to a very ridiculously high standards in terms of like body mass index. Like I think a normal healthy weight for me would be like 130 pounds, and I weigh 155. So I'm trying to figure out if maybe it's because I have a different body type, or if I really need to lose those other 20 pounds in order to be fine. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to go crazy or anything. I mean, I think I look pretty good the way I am. Although I wish I could have straightened out this hair a little bit. It's so frizzy, but then again, it could just be the weather. But probably the only real thing is, well, I kind of want a bit more of a flat stomach, and I have a little. It kind of protrudes out a little bit. Not as much as my chest does, so I think I'm good in that aspect, but maybe I'm just holding myself to too high of a standard. I do want to mention one minor thing as well. It doesn't really seem like a whole lot, but this month I went out and I bought some underwear. I was buying a lot of groceries at a local Walmart, and they had like little stands set up for like clearance they were having for women's underwear. They also had some for men's, but obviously I wanted the women's underwear. And it kind of made me reflect a little bit. The idea that I remember the first time I ever bought gender affirming underwear, like, that was absolutely terrifying. This day and age, I just kind of go up there and I just be like, just looking for something in my size. Yeah, it looks like my size, colors. Yeah, it's alright. It's like me just going to the produce section and picking up a nice bag of Brussels sprouts. And on top of that, I'm pretty happy about this new batch of underwear as well. Like, they fit really nicely. Which is kind of rare because obviously women's underwear is not designed for the thing that I'm trying desperately to get rid of. One of the biggest things as well is this month I very much delved into the philosophical side of being trans. And it all started from this one video. The YouTuber that made it, her name was Lily Alexandre. I hope I'm saying that right. What the video went over was it was exploring scientific reasons as to why people are trans in the first place. And while there has been a lot of research into the topic, there's never really been a smoking gun as of yet. There are some correlations some people figured out, and I guess one of them is trans people are more likely to be left-handed. Maybe on a good day I can convince people I'm ambidextrous, but I'm right-handed myself. Now, one of the things this video brought up that I never really thought before was the idea of, imagine if with our scientific knowledge we found a specific gene, that if we found out a person had this gene, they would grow up to be transgender. On one hand, this can be a little bit of a relief. It's just kind of like, okay, well, this is something to expect. Once they reach that age, we'll just help them along. However, there is the dark side of things. The YouTuber went into the idea of ultrasound and the idea that it could predict the gender of the baby, which on one hand it's good, but on the other there's a lot of societies that see anything as other than a boy as evil and has to be destroyed. So in some areas, realizing that the baby is a girl, well, they're just gonna get rid of it before it even comes into this life, rather than give it some sort of chance for survival. And that could very well be what might happen if we did find some sort of secret gene that dictated why we were trans. And on top of that, say if that gene were to be found, it could be something that could be used for, say, discrimination in the workforce, for instance. Like, you would have to apply to some sort of DNA test, and if you test positive, oh, sorry, we don't hire any of those. There was also another video in my recommendations from the same YouTuber, actually. And the title of it was, What is a Woman? I never actually clicked on the video, but it was something that was just always in the back of my mind. Well, this one server I'm a part of that's helping me with my voice training, as you can see I still got a little ways to go, brought up a fun little question for conversation. The immortal is a hot dog a sandwich debate. And as this debate was going on, I started to realize that a very similar thing could be said about gender. So for those of you that don't know, so we got a hot dog and we got a sandwich. Some people would say that a hot dog would be classified as a sandwich, or a burrito, or maybe something so completely other that it's just a hot dog. It's a generalization that breaks down when you apply some scrutiny to it. Because if you think about it, what is a hot dog but a piece of meat between bread? That's exactly what a sandwich is. But at the same time, there is also a bit of expectations as well. If you were to go to a hot dog vendor out there in the street, what are you expecting to get? A piece of sausage on a bun, probably with some condiments on the side like ketchup, mustard, or even some relish. Or they might even be able to sell chili dogs. However, if you were to go up to a hot dog vendor in the street and after you order a hot dog, they give you a euro, well, you'd be very confused. And it's very much the same thing with gender, I think. Being a woman, I think, is a generalization. Now, what that generalization means depends on the person as well as the society they live in. There's different expectations about what a certain gender is supposed to look like, supposed to act like, what their emotions are, what their psychology is. It's a generalization. And if you really want to scrutinize it and try to figure out what a woman is, you see it kind of just falls apart because there's so many little things that could point to another gender as well. But in general, that's how society views gender. What about more with the individual? For me, I think about it like this. So, with junior high school, we had this book as required reading, To Kill a Mockingbird. Now you got several types of students when it comes to reading this book. There'd be some that read it from cover to cover, and they understand everything there is to get out of it. There are those that read it cover to cover and are kind of confused. And then there are some that read it cover to cover, have absolutely no idea what it's about, but claim that they know everything about it. There are those that can't be bothered to read the whole thing, so they bring up Spark Notes or whatever sort of summary possible, and then use that to claim that they read the whole thing and that they perfectly understand it. And you got some people that just don't read it at all, and they claim that they have and they understand everything about it. And you can kind of see that I'm putting this on a spectrum. There's a lot of different people out there. There's a lot of different philosophies. There's a lot of different mentalities. And that's generally what I think people's understanding of gender is. The idea of something that has been assumed because everybody told it about them, something they discovered for themselves, or something that they just simply don't care nor want to learn more about. Now, one of the other bits of philosophy started out pretty innocent enough. So not too long ago, I changed my profile picture on Discord to Poison from Street Fighter, which in turn started up a fair bit of conversation. Now, a few of you might know that Poison is kind of a trans icon. However, at the same time, it didn't necessarily start with the best intentions. So when Final Fight was being created, some of the character designers wanted to have a female henchwoman, or henchwench as I like to say. However, the people over at Capcom were worried about feminist groups seeing them beating up women. So they're just like, you know what, how about we make them trans women? And that's how Poison ended up being a trans woman. Kind of speaks to the sad state of affairs at the time. I'd like to think that we've become a bit more accepting this day and age. But anyway, in changing my profile picture, there's a bit of conversation about other famous trans characters in video games as well. And one of them I had never heard of. Her name is Bridget from a game called Guilty Gears, and if you know what I'm talking about, you can probably see where this conversation is going. Essentially, this character was born male, however was raised female because she had a twin brother, and twins of the same gender were often seen as an omen of bad luck. So the parents raised Bridget as a girl. However, as she started to get older, she realized that she wanted to try a different identity, to see what she would be like if she was a man, and so she had a bit of a quest line going through there. But after a while, she realized that being a man didn't really make her happy, so instead, she wanted to stay as female as the way she was assigned by her parents. But this time because she wanted it, not because of what other people told her to be. And that in turn led to this very interesting video. The idea of how transgender people are understood in Eastern philosophy. So I'm going to briefly summarize. It was like a good half-hour video. Very engaging, but I do not want to describe everything. The basic idea behind Eastern philosophy was the idea that the emphasis was on the group, not the individual. It was up to the individual to blend into the group. So the idea of an individual that didn't feel right in their gender conforming to the gender they wished to be in order to be a member of the group was not frowned upon, but very much encouraged. However, the same couldn't be said for gay marriage because that is something completely different, completely contrarian, very individual, as opposed to assimilating. And as a fun little fact, actually, so I'm not sure how many people know this, but Iraq, probably one of the biggest countries when it comes to the Muslim faith, they're all perfectly fine with the idea of somebody transitioning. In fact, even the government will help subsidize the cost of surgery. But of course, if you're going from male to female, you gotta make sure to wear the burqa, otherwise they're gonna stone you for wearing too little clothes. But all the same, it's not really something you would think about. So I started to think a little bit, and the idea that that's what Eastern philosophy is. So I find it absolutely weird that traditional Western philosophy is all about the emphasis of the individual becoming the best them possible. Which, at least by my personal definition, that's what transitioning is all about. To be the best possible you could be. I transitioned because I was not the best possible me I could be. So how come the idea of transitioning is being seen in a more negative light in Western philosophy than Eastern philosophy? I don't have an answer to that, as the video was really more about Eastern philosophies. Maybe it's more about the idea of, like, certain individuals will step on people that are trans in order to elevate themselves. But then again, what if a trans person did the stepping to elevate themselves? It gets a little muddled for me thinking about Western philosophy, but then again, I did not watch a video on that. I watched a video on Eastern philosophy. And on top of that, even in what we call Western philosophy, there still exists an emphasis on the group. Take, like, any religious movement, really. Personally, I was raised Catholic, so I'm going to use that as an example. It's all about the idea of surrendering yourself, being an individual, and being assimilated as the group. The idea of being contrarian is frowned upon because you're not part of the group anymore. And on top of that, you could probably argue the same for political philosophies as well, but you know my stance on politics. That is all I'm going to mention of that giant tire fire. Now on to a less politically engaging conversation with another odd bit of philosophy I never thought of. Dating. This is something that, well, in the past, never really saw the point of. I had to console a lot of friends through some really bad breakups, And after so much time, I'm just kind of like, why would anybody willingly put themselves through this? It wasn't until my egg started to crack that I was even remotely interested in dating. And while transitioning, this was something that I just kind of put in the back of my head because, well, she said no. Not to be like I was completely scorned by that, but it was more the idea that I wanted to focus on myself. And now I actually love myself. And now that I do, I want to share that love with other people. I'm actually getting interested in going on a date, having a romantic evening, that kind of thing. However, that leads into a few little biases that I have. Probably the first thing is that, well, being raised male, there's so much etiquette. Like, if my date happened to be female, I had to open the door for her. On the first date, I would have to pay for both of our meals. If both of us somehow went out dancing, I'd be the one that would have to lead. But now that I'm a lesbian, there's not really a set standard for this sort of thing, is it? So I could just do whatever I want. Whenever it came to the idea of a date, the picture that always came to my mind was a romantic candlelit dinner for two at some sort of posh restaurant. But now that I've gotten older, I don't really see how that'd be romantic. I wouldn't be able to focus on the romance because I'd be more focused on my checkbook. And on top of that, it doesn't really seem all that intimate. I feel like a date should be a bit more personalized. Like, do a little bit of talking beforehand and realize what both people like. And if it turns out that, say, both of us love hibachi or something like that, then, well, we're going to go out to hibachi because that means a lot more to both of us. That, to me, that sounds like fun. That seems worth it. And it'd be kind of nice to just be able to chat beforehand to being able to go on a date. Now, I know that there's people that like the speed date or go on blind dates, but I think it'd make more sense to at least know a thing or two about the person you're going on the date with to begin with. For example, imagine you get to the date and you realize that both of you have nothing in common, or both have like very different takes on very serious topics. It'd be better to realize that perhaps you wouldn't be able to make it work, or you could make it work before you go out on such a date. So, this was brought up in one of my therapy sessions. However, there was a little bit of conversation after the session. It started from this one video about this one trans woman that went through her experience of transitioning. And I never really thought about it before, but my pool of available people to date has gotten a lot smaller. Because before, just date women. And now I am a lesbian. So I need to find somebody that's not only attracted to women, but also wouldn't discount me because I'm a trans woman. Now in the video, the creator was a little worried about how small that pool could be. However, I personally think it might be a little bigger. One of the other problems I have as well is, obviously, if I'm going to be dating a lesbian, they're probably going to be in the alphabet soup committee. Much like myself. This is something I'm rather nervous about, as I have been very horribly hurt by a lot of people in the alphabet soup community. And well, when you're romantically involved with somebody, you really have to open yourself up. And when that happens, you're a lot more vulnerable to attack. And I still kind of carry the scars of the other people of the alphabet soup committee that have hurt me. And that was when I had my defenses up. So I can't imagine how much worse it would be if I was completely vulnerable. However, That's just something I'll have to get over myself. After all, I remember I was very much afraid with the idea of transitioning in the first place. And well, that turned out pretty successfully. I guess when it comes to the dating world, I'll see about taking a plunge there as well. So, yeah. You can see I ended up doing a lot this month. However, if there's anything else you're curious about, feel free to leave a comment down below. And as always, no politics. Until next time, be yourself, no matter who that is.